This meeting is being recorded.
So just some general housekeeping, please keep your devices on mute. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put in the chat. We love when we have a lot of questions, and our presenter will be happy to answer them as we go along, and then at the end of the presentation as well. And just a quick reminder that today we are also giving away free individual NCCA membership. So all you have to do is, obviously, if you're here, you're partially eligible, then fill out the survey at the end of our webinar, and we will put you in the drawing and then pick at random and send you the confirmation. So we hope that you enjoy all the information you learn here today about advocacy work from our director, Cindy Lehnhoff. And I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to our executive director, Storm Webb, to give the introductions. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Mariah. Cindy started her early childhood career in 1980 as a preschool teacher for La Petite in Oklahoma City. She worked for La Petite, who later became part of the Learning Care Group until she retired in 2016. Throughout her 36-year career, she served as an educator, director, district director, division director, and division vice president. In her many roles as a multi-site manager, she's had the opportunity to work in 12 different states. Along the way, she developed a passion for accreditation and advocacy that would help uplift programs into high-quality early care and education centers. Over 100 of the centers that she supervised achieved NECPA accreditation under her leadership. She has served on our NECPA and NCCA Board for over 20 years, and she was appointed as the director of the National Child Care Association in 2019. It's my great pleasure to turn today's presentation over to my very good friend and colleague, Cindy Lehnhoff.
Thank you, Storm and Mariah, and thank you to all of our essential early care and professional and education professionals for joining today. I really appreciate it. I know that many of you are in the middle of school starting and going through the transition from summer to school actually starting, which is predominantly in the South. And then, of course, those of you that are a little further north, you're getting ready to prepare for the transition. And that's, you know, just one more thing that you do while you're doing what you do every day, and that's caring for and educating children. So I do appreciate you joining and having an interest in advocacy, because that's what we spend a lot of our time doing at the NCCA on your behalf. But I'm hoping that, you know, as we embark upon this presentation, which I've titled The Why and How to Becoming an Effective Advocate for Early Care and Education, that each of you will leave today with some motivation and inspiration to take your advocacy to the next level, because there are different levels of it. I would like to start, however, by finding out a little bit more about our participants today. So I asked Mariah to put together a poll. So if Mariah could bring up the poll. The first poll question is, what type of childcare do you provide? Are you a licensed center-based childcare? Or are you a licensed or registered family home childcare? Or you are other? Or are you other, which means you might be unlicensed and still operating a child care center in your state? Well, it looks like so far we still have a few that haven't answered. It would really be nice to know, you know, who and what you represent. At this point, it looks like the majority of you, 57%, are licensed center-based childcare, 21% are licensed or registered family home childcare, and we have about 21% other. It would be nice to know, if you want to put in the chat, what other is. I mean, it could be you're representing a childcare association in one of our states, or perhaps a childcare licensing individual, but it's really nice to know who we're talking to. So thank you for sharing that result. Okay, let's go to poll question number 2. All right. What part of the United States is your child care center or family child care home located? Are you in the Northeast, the Southeast, the Midwest, the Northwest, or the Southwest? It looks like we have the biggest presence at this point from the Northeast, 43% of those that are answering the poll. Southeast, 31%, Midwest, 6%, Northwest, 6%, and Southwest, 19%. And you know, one of the reasons I asked this question is that there is a huge difference in economic circumstances and childcare licensing regulations in the different regions across the United States. And it has a lot of bearing on what people are paying for childcare and where childcare is accessible and affordable. So it's just helpful to us to know who our audience is, not just for this particular presentation, but for our future webinars that we hope are, helpful to you. Okay, so we'll share the result and then we'll go to poll question 3.
Hi, Cindy. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Unfortunately, it seems like our chat is disabled. So if you have a question, what I'd love for you to do is you can always raise your hand, but we're looking into enabling that chat now. Thank you very much for letting us know.
Thank you, Storm. Okay, poll question number 3. Where are your licensed childcare centers or family childcare homes located? Are you in a rural area? Are you in a suburban area that is growing with new residential homes? Lucky you. An aging suburban area with little or no growth in new residential homes, or an urban area? Interestingly enough, we seem to have a bit of a tie between a suburban area that is growing with new residential homes. And when I say lucky you, that means that typically where there are new rooftops, as we used to refer to them when I was working, for LCG, new rooftops usually mean new families, and families with young children. Urban areas, we also have 31% participating from an urban area. And that is, those can be difficult situations as far as making sure that you have enough funding to operate in an urban area, because sometimes there are lower economic circumstances. The rural areas are the same when it comes to not always thriving due to lower economic circumstances for parents in those markets, but it still costs a lot to offer childcare, and we're not getting the funding that we need to help as many families that need it get it. And then there's the aging area, which is about 19%. So, well, thank you for that. Again, these help us more than they probably help you, and we appreciate your participation. And the last question is really the most important, and I would love for 100% of you to participate if at all possible. In your opinion, what is needed most to make high quality licensed or family childcare affordable and accessible to parents of all economic backgrounds? Local or nationwide businesses offering a childcare benefit to their employees, more federal funding to the states for the purpose of raising the subsidy rates to providers, more federal funding to the states for the purpose of raising the income of parents that qualify for subsidy to the median income of a state. In other words, being able to include more lower and middle income families that can't continue to pay 20% or more of their salaries to high quality licensed childcare. but neither can we ask providers to take less than it costs to offer the services. And then finally, tax breaks for licensed childcare providers that would help them pay their staff more and keep rates for parents, tax breaks for licensed childcare providers that would help them pay their staff more and keep rates for parents more affordable. Sorry about that. Okay, well, it looks like the tax breaks win with 27%, 13% more federal funding for the purpose of raising the income of parents that qualify for subsidy to the median income of a state, and then more federal funding to the states for the purpose of raising the subsidy rates was less than 10% at 7%. And local or nationwide businesses offering a child care benefit for their employees, 7%. Quite honestly, it's probably going to take a combination of these things. I don't think there's any one answer that is going to help the child care industry in the United States, the private child care industry, thrive and be of high quality and accessible and affordable to parents of different circumstances. But thank you for sharing. And ultimately, again, any of your comments that you may have that would help us, further understand what it is the NCCA should and could be doing more of on your behalf and with your help is helpful to us in determining what, our advocacy for you as a child care business and educator. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for participating in the poll. I would like to move on to our presentation today. And if we could go back to the first slide, that would be helpful, Mariah. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not as good with the computer as I should be. But with Mariah and Storm's help, I'm better than I would be alone. I wanted to come back to this screen simply because I wanted you to think about this quote. And it's actually from an American teacher who actually took a group of high school students through a process, a low income group of high school students that basically were, expected to fail and not succeed. And she was determined to help them, and she did. And ultimately, she did it through them working together on writing about their experiences and thinking about what it was that they, could and should change to take them in a positive direction in their life. But her quote really speaks to me, and that is, "Silence ensures that history repeats itself." Unfortunately, this is a quote that continues to resonate with me year after year when it comes to demanding or advocating for the changes we know must occur to ensure that the United States of America has a thriving and high quality licensed childcare infrastructure for all children in all different economic circumstances. So I want you to think about that as you think about, what we need to do differently to grab and keep the attention of our legislators and our U.S. legislators and state legislators that would change the way childcare is funded. Because until we do that, it's not going to be affordable and accessible to enough children. All right, let's go to the next slide. Our takeaways today, we're going to start off with the state of childcare before, during, and beyond COVID. Because at this point, we always have to reflect on history, where we've been, what we've been doing, and what are the facts that drove us there and where we are, because we can't really map out a strategy for improvement unless we know what has worked and what hasn't worked. And then, of course, defining what is an advocate and why you, as the people on this call representing this industry in high quality licensed childcare, must be an advocate. You just can't avoid it. If you've been avoiding it, you really can't. And I hope you get that from this presentation. We're going to talk about the 3 C's of advocacy and getting prepared to advocate and how you can be an effective advocate. And then last but not least, the federal legislative update, which I'm sorry to report is not positive. And so again, maybe I should have put that at the front, but I think we want to actually make sure that we know where we stand so we can utilize what we learned today. And what I hope you'll learn. And I'm also open to you teaching me and everybody else on this call, because you may have some amazing information that could, help another person on this call and could help me, because we are all learning together how to best approach effective advocacy. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Mariah. Thank you so much for being my slide person. So let's talk about early care and education before COVID-19. And I just, wanted to choose what I think are, 6 facts that really enlightened me, even more so as a long-term advocate. And I hope they also help you understand even more than you do now, I'm sure, why we have to band together as a unified voice and a loud voice for childcare. First and foremost, 51% of all children ages 0 to 6 lived in a childcare desert. A childcare desert is defined as an area, a community, or a city where there are less licensed childcare spots, whether it be in a family childcare home or center, than the number of children between the ages of 0 and 6 that actually live there. That's over half of the children that do not have access to a high quality licensed childcare center. And those of you that are in rural areas, you are probably, you probably are like one of the last hopes for the people in your community. And you're probably hanging on by a thread, because rural communities often do not have high income areas. Next, before COVID, there were approximately 4 million childcare settings in the US. 4 million childcare settings. Of those, only about 6% of them were licensed childcare centers in family childcare homes. I was stunned by that when I learned that. I really didn't realize that there were a lot more children being cared for in unlicensed and unregulated circumstances than there were children that were being cared for in licensed childcare centers and family childcare homes. Only 1 in 7 children that qualified for childcare assistance in the US actually had access to it. And by that, I mean, the only actual childcare assistance program at the federal level, and it is the primary program that supports childcare assistance in all 50 states, is through the Child Care Development Block Grant. And every year it is funded in a manner that it only qualifies it only has enough money to pay for one child in 7 that qualify for it. 25 million school-age children did not have access to quality before and after school care due to affordability and availability. That's a lot of children. And we all know it costs a lot to offer that care, especially now with the price of gas. Licensed child care centers were operating on razor-thin margins due to the high cost of operating a high-quality regulated program. And again, because there's so little funding at the federal level that filters down to the states before COVID, or there was so little, we have, pushed so many children into unlicensed circumstances. And again, that's no fault to you, because again, you were operating on razor thin margins because you're trying to do the right thing. Hiring and retaining credential or degree teachers required to meet many states' QRIS requirements was a challenge. And remember, this is all before COVID. So let's go to the next slide and let's look at what was happening and is still happening, childcare during COVID-19, because we're still in the midst of it. Certainly we are moving forward, but we are actually in a bigger pickle than we were even before COVID, in spite of a lot of funding that will not remain much longer for those that live in states that have received it. So first of all, the childcare industry, as I know all of you know, was brought to the brink of collapse. If it hadn't been for PPP loans and stimulus packages, those of you on the phone would have already, gone under. Childcare centers lost nearly 70% of their enrollment at the beginning of COVID, which of course was a huge revenue loss, but you still had, bills to pay. Childcare lost about a third of our workforce. That's a lot. And they didn't all return, as we know. Congress did realize, and this was a very positive thing, that childcare was fragile and essential. And it's the first time in history that they ever really did that. We still didn't get the same type of recognition that first responders, medical individuals, grocery store clerks, and again, those are all very essential. But we all know that we are also very essential, and actually probably the most essential, because we're the reason the rest of the essential individuals get to go to work. So as a result, 3 stimulus bills were passed between March 20th and April 21st, providing a historical amount of money to save our childcare infrastructure during the peak of the pandemic, which was $52.5 billion. And keep in mind that during a normal year, in the last couple of years, we've only received about $6 billion subsidy for what has become a routine budget item, the Child Care Development Block Grant. So you can see how much more money we received. The money is still being used to help providers and families with their child care expenses. Unfortunately, it runs out in 2023. And unless something changes, the annual budget for child care will go back to being extremely underfunded. All right, let's go to the next slide. What is an advocate and why you must be one? This is so critical. You cannot work in this industry. You cannot have a child needing childcare. You cannot be an employer who needs employees and not be an advocate. What is an advocate? Advocacy involves promoting the interest or cause of someone or a group of people. An advocate is a person who argues for, recommends, or supports a cause or policy. Advocacy is also about helping people find their voice. There are 3 types of advocacy. There is self-advocacy, individual advocacy, and systems advocacy. Our focus as childcare providers and educators is on systems advocacy, meaning we are about changing policies, laws, or rules that impact how people live their lives. Very critical that we, speak to this one type of advocacy when it comes to working together to have a unified, loud, and consistent voice all the way to Washington, D.C. You must be an advocate because childcare is essential to working parents. And right now, I think everybody knows that we are seeing a critical shortage of childcare in the United States, because I would be willing to bet that 100% of you are not able to fill to your capacity because you don't have the staff needed to take care of them and educate them. Childcare is essential to children who need a safe and nurturing space to grow and learn while their parents work. I mean, that's a given, and we know it's a given, but for some reason, our legislators, especially in Washington, D.C., think that this has gone away, as we leave the pandemic, the COVID pandemic era, which is why they're not putting any more money into the budget as we move past 2023 and the stimulus package money runs out. Childcare is essential to employers who rely on a dependable workforce. Childcare is essential to a thriving U.S. economy. And it's unfortunate, but in speaking with U.S. legislators and even state legislators, sometimes we almost have to lead with that. Our natural tendency as childcare and early education professionals is to lead with doing what's right for children. And I don't really want us to change that in our hearts and minds, but we also have to think about the bigger picture for our legislators. And what do we hear about in the news more than anything is, economy. So we have to tie back how essential childcare is to a thriving economy. We also must advocate because our childcare infrastructure is broken and it demands change in order to become accessible, affordable, and equitable for all children. And if we don't fix it, more and more centers will go out of business. And we have seen that happen prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and it will continue. And it will erode more in rural areas, areas that are not growing as far as, residential homes, and also in urban areas where people live, at the lower end of the economic spectrum. And when I say lower, I'm including lower middle and middle income children, because we can't continue to ask parents to pay the 20% of what they make. It's more than their housing. It's more than any other expense they have to us to take care of their child and educate their child. But neither can we as a profession and an industry continue to operate on razor thin margins and be there for those families. And because childcare demands change, but lacks enough advocates speaking in a unified voice to get the attention of our state and federal legislators. And I think I've said that. I'm somebody that often repeats myself because I still feel like, we're struggling to get the attention of enough advocates to understand that we're going to need volume. We're going to need to speak loud, often, and in big numbers, because we don't have the money to buy our congressional legislators, but we have a voice. All right, let's go to our next slide. The 3 C's of advocacy. And I'm hoping this will help you, and that at the end of this, I would love for a couple of you to share with me what you're taking away and what it is you've learned today that will help you in your advocacy. Because I am going to be positive and actually know that every one of you will take your advocacy to a different level. And I also realize you're starting at a different point. Some of you may just now be dipping your toe in, and others may be seasoned. All right. Well, our goal in advocacy is to collaborate, connect, and communicate. Some ideas for that: join a child care association, organized group, and our Chamber of Commerce at a federal, state, or local level. Join committees, councils representing the Office of Child Care in your state. Get familiar with your legislators in your district, both state and federal, your governors and administrators of ECE training programs in community colleges and higher ed. Connect, not complain, and be solution-oriented. You know, it goes back to the poll question. What do you think we need? You know, and what can you do to prepare when you are actually communicating to an agency or a leader that has a say over how your business can thrive for families in the community that you live and do business in. And most of all, please remember, you are a stakeholder, you're a voter, and an essential business, and your voice matters. And it's needed to get the attention of our state and federal decision makers. We just can't sit around a table and complain and talk about what we need and hope things will get done because somebody else has more time than we have to do it. We all have to learn to find our advocacy niche. Okay, next slide. Be prepared to be effective, because again, you don't have a lot of time, and the people you'll be speaking to or working with don't either. So first and foremost, you want to assure the leaders at multiple levels understand the scope of the child care crisis that has been building for years. Use personal stories and data. Ensure child care is respected and recognized as an essential business. And that's up to you, because you have to present yourself as a professional. You have to speak as one. And again, you have a lot of knowledge that you don't always give yourself credit for. Ask for changes that will support equity, accessibility, and affordability for the families you serve. Share issues and possible solutions. How often have you, as a provider, or even as an educator in a classroom, seen a family have to leave your services, your child care center or home, because you had to raise your rate to continue to be able to offer a high quality licensed child care center or home? And you know it happens. And what does that tell you? It tells you that that parent is in an income bracket that typically needs some help and support beyond what you can provide, and take care of your own family. And last but not least, require a robust plan that will allow you as a business owner to execute a sustainable, high quality early care and education program. Remember, your success as a provider and early educator keeps young children safe and learning while their parents work. And you have to constantly reinforce that. I personally have emailed and called the 2 senators and my representative in the state of Florida and actually had virtual meetings. And one of them, I visited his office twice in DC because I had that opportunity. And even though they don't want to discuss it, they don't want to, give it up, I'm not giving up. They will continue to hear from me. And this is why they're going to continue to hear from me. And I hope they'll hear from you. We do not have a positive federal legislative update for childcare. Some of you may or may not remember, but under our current administration, our president put out the Build Back Better Act well over a year ago and asked Congress to put $800 billion into childcare and early education. That was a huge ask. And I think overall, I think we all knew that at some point that ask might be lowered. But never in a million years did we think we would end up with 0. So just so you know, in case you are somebody that doesn't have time to watch the news or just aggravates the what out of you, because it does me, but I still watch. There's a new act. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act. The Senate passed it last week over a months-long negotiations on how to break down the Build Back Better Act so that Congress was not being asked to approve a $1.9 trillion package under the Build Back Better Act, with $800 billion going to childcare. So after all the negotiations were done in the Senate, and it was voted on over the weekend after, I understand, 24 hours of debate, we ended up with a $740 billion spending bill versus the 1.9. And again, I'm not questioning that bill, had to be reduced. Unfortunately, the majority of the bill is going to climate change and energy. And I don't really mean unfortunately. I think climate change and energy security is important. But in the original bill, they were only being provided $400 billion. And as you can see, that pretty much stayed intact. In this bill, they got $369 billion. This includes tax and other incentives to promote electric cars and other things that will help us with climate change and energy security. And I'm not an expert on this subject, but I just want you to see how money was spent. Okay, then the IRS is being given almost $80 billion. And that'll allow for a substantial increase in enforcement agents. Some reports are up to 87,000 new agents. And I kept thinking, oh my gosh, if we could just get 80,000 new people in childcare working, if we could have got just 80 billion for childcare staff, that would have been amazing. But this will also help with technology acquisition and legal service requirements. And ultimately, some of that will probably come back, in revenue, because there will be more audits. Unfortunately, it is also being speculated that a lot of the small business people will suffer as a result of the audits. And that includes the majority of our childcare providers, because 93% of our licensed childcare centers in the United States are small businesses. Funding for environmental justice priorities. And again, I'm not saying that the $60 billion they got is not important. It's just what I could find in researching on what was in this spending bill. And that's going to invest in communities that suffer the most from environmental and health hazards. And again, I'm not questioning that. The other part of the bill that had a large amount of money dedicated to it is healthcare, and I could not find a dollar amount. I probably could have read the bill, which is several, like close to, I think, 800 pages, but I knew you didn't really want me to do that. So I don't know what the cost or what was put into that spending bill, but it does include the extension of more generous Affordable Care Act premium subsidies. So this was meant to help families that do not have access to insurance at some of the higher rates. They will be offered more subsidy. Again, I'm not questioning that, but there's childcare. Look what we got. Zero. I mean, I don't know, but I am so shocked. I'm just like, I can't believe it. And I'm sure you can't either. And the bottom line is this, and if you want to go to the next slide, we just have to all commit to being an advocate. We just have to. And then we also have to be committed to helping others become advocates. The parents, the staff in your schools, the businesses around you, because every day you are turning away children in some classroom, I am certain, because you don't have the staff, or you're on the verge of closing your business because you don't have the staff. And what would help us get staff? If we could be more equitable with, retirement programs and salaries, we wouldn't lose some of our credentialed and degreed people to public schools. Unfortunately, and it pains me to say this, childcare has never had enough advocates to get what has been needed to do the work for children and families that research and experience has told us is needed for it to be more equitable, accessible, and affordable. This was a quote I heard many years ago, and it's really so true. And we are standing in the middle of this. People don't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than changing. And if you are advocating at some level, think about what is the next level I need to go to. If you're not advocating, then think about what you can do, because if you don't start spending a few minutes here and there on advocacy, we are going to slip away. If the majority of individuals working in licensed childcare, parents needing childcare, and businesses needing employees remain silent, then they're all destined to get what they've always got, because providers can no longer afford to carry the load. And I know I'm speaking to the choir. And as one of the individuals, Barbara, said, this is especially true of children under 2. And absolutely, I know of a provider in Virginia who used to care for 23 infants, and she now is only able to care for 8 because she's not able to staff it in spite of great efforts. And if we could go to the last slide, or was this the last slide? You can start advocating by simply participating in the NCC action alerts. If you know about this webinar, that tells me you are getting our emails. And we consistently put out what we call action alerts in our weekly newsletters and emails. It only takes a minute and a quick click for your voice to go directly to your U.S. members of Congress. And if you don't know how to do this and you want my help, I'm going to give you my cell phone number to call me the next time you see an action alert if you need help with following through. My personal number is 405-922-2140. And then pass it on to your parents. Pass it on to your staff. We're not going to quit talking about this just because we were left out. And Storm, excuse me, has put up our number, our 877 number in the chat for you. And I just can't, I'm to the point, I just feel like I'm begging, I'm pleading. We want to help you help you. And I hope that our ideas here today have given you a new opportunity to rethink your advocacy efforts. And again, my number is 405-922-2140. And I know some of you are probably thinking I'm crazy, but I just feel it's that important. And before we switch over and let you do some of the talking, I thought I saw somewhere in the chat that somebody wanted to know how I got started in advocacy and how I became so passionate about it. So I'll give you a 2 to 3 minute overview. I was working, it was the mid 80s, and I had been promoted to a district manager from a director position for Petite Academy. Some of you know them as Learning Care Group now, in Oklahoma City. I had 8 locations that had all opened within 3 years. And I was working to not only fill them, but staff them. They were new locations. And actually, we were doing pretty well on filling because the oil industry was rocking it and everybody was working. We were struggling to get people to work in childcare because we were paying minimum wage at that point, and people were going to work in the oil industry. Well, lo and behold, the oil industry went under in the mid 80s in Oklahoma. And here I'm sitting with these 8 childcare centers that I have to make sure that they are not, in the red. And I really didn't know how to fix it. And my home office didn't really know how to fix it because our home office was in Missouri, and Missouri wasn't having, an oil crisis where the oil industry went under in Oklahoma and Texas. Well, I kept having this lady call me. Her name was Kathy Kronmiller, my good friend Kathy, who passed away last year. And I hope she's looking down from heaven and feeling really proud of everybody that attended today. She kept calling me to say, hey, you need to come to an Oklahoma Child Care Association meeting. We need to figure out what we're going to do to keep taking care of kids during this, crisis. So I finally, listen, the pain of staying the same, because I was starting to get a lot of grief from my boss about why my centers were losing money, because she lived in Kansas. So I thought, well, I guess I'll go. Maybe they've got some ideas. Wow, did they have some ideas? They lived and breathed as small business owners how to keep their doors open. And they shared with me. And that's how I learned about the food program. I learned that because there were so many laid off people in Oklahoma, and people working lower income jobs during this, crisis where they had been making big money in the oil fields, we had a lot of people that were qualifying for subsidy. And I hadn't really taken any subsidy customers or food program. Oh my, we survived as a result of me joining this group. Well, over the years, this group of individuals, the Oklahoma Child Care Association, just kept reaching higher and working more with child care licensing, because child care licensing wanted us to reach higher for kids and to do more as far as offering higher quality programs. And that's where I learned about, if you got accredited in the state of Oklahoma, you would receive higher levels of funding for subsidy children. And at that time, I had 50% of all of my customers were receiving subsidy because my centers were aging and we weren't seeing a lot of new rooftops, and we weren't in new residential areas. And that's how I got invited to become part of NECPA and NCCA and started attending national meetings and learning about how to be an advocate at both the national level and at the state level. And as a result, I was also part of 2 subcommittees in the state of Oklahoma that rewrote licensing regulations and included feedback from providers like myself. And then I eventually was a member of the Oklahoma advisory committee that you could only become a part of if you were appointed by the governor. I mean, this is how I grew into this. And you can do that too. Or if you don't have time, just do a quick click. Read our emails and participate in our action alerts, because that is really going to help if we get enough people doing this. So we have a few minutes left, and I would just like to invite any of you that would like to contribute to this conversation, whether it be something that you've been successful doing at your state level or something that you would like to tell us as the NCCA that you would like for us to initiate and do more of on your behalf, but also with your participation, because I can't say it enough. We can't do it alone. I'm so hoping somebody will be brave and speak up. How about Brittany from QRIS? I saw, Brittany, where you made a comment in the chat. And I know that QRIS is doing so much to help providers get some help from our businesses out there. Hey, Brittany.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
Good. Welcome to our call.
Thank you. I guess we are so happy to partner with y'all and work with y'all. And, I'm going to suggest to our marketing team to see if we can get some word out on the actionable items that you guys have presented. I think that'll be really helpful. And of course, we give our free software to all the providers so they can help them with that, the daily tasks of just keeping everything going on. We're always, available to help with that. And, if there's something specific that you think that we can help out with, I'd love to hear, and we can, go further with that.
Okay, well, definitely, I want to remind everybody that QRIS is one of our business affiliates, and they do offer services to our members for free. And again, Storm has put up the website for QRIS. And ultimately, if somebody would like to know more about QRIS, give us a call, shoot us an email. We will do what we can, because Eric and Alessandra and Brittany and the people that work with QRIS are so passionate about making sure providers are able to stay in business, and that families have a high quality early education center to go to while their parents work. So thank you, Brittany. We appreciate your participation and all that QRIS is doing.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Hey, Barbara.
Hey, I just want to say it's really important. I've been associated with NCCA for a long time. I've been in the field for over 30 years. And it's really important to reach out to your local representatives and county and state. And I'm in the state of Maryland. So it's really important to become part of associations and different programs that can help us, because we're all suffering, it sucks. Plain and simple.
For lack of a better word, it does.
So just, anybody on the call that's listening, just reach out to your local and county representatives, as well as the state that you're in, you know, and find out who your representatives are and find a way to contact them, because this is not just Maryland, this is a lot of different states. So just find your resources.
And Barbara, thank you for mentioning, you know, what you're doing and encouraging others to do the same. Maryland, the state of Maryland is one of our NCCA, the Maryland Child Care Association is one of our members of NCCA, which means everybody that's a member of their association is a member of NCCA. They do a lot of incredible work to, you know, move childcare forward in Maryland. But again, it's never enough. It's just never enough. We tend to get so busy running our centers and working in our centers. And that's why our quick action alerts are, you know, so beneficial to advocates that are not able to spend a lot of time because you're driving your bus. And actually our action alerts will, you know, you click on and you put in your zip code and it takes you right to your US Senator and US Representatives websites to do a quick email.
And that's very true, because many center directors now, because of staffing shortages, are in the classroom. So they only get a short amount of time to be in the office and do advocacy and do other things, scholarships and all that stuff, vouchers. And I know it's called scholarships now, but you know, it's very true. You know, it's a difficult time. I mean, we're down 50%, and I serve 35 children under two and under. And I work in a transitional home for homeless women and teen parents. So it's, you know, those are all key things that need to be included in some of the advocacy work and what is being sent to senators and so forth, because they really need to get a handle on it, because they have no idea.
You're absolutely right. Don't let them rest. And hey, for those of you that just saw me give a look out the side of my eyes, that was my husband using the microwave for his lunch. So the beauty of officing at home, right? So just so you know, if you hear noise in the background, it's because he's making his lunch. He's a retired folk.
Good for him.
Yeah. So is there anybody out there? We have, you know, a couple more minutes that would like to contribute to the conversation. And if not, we'll let you have a minute back and go out there and be an advocate.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Cindy. Everything that you said is right on the mark, of course, as usual, and very, very relevant to what's going on. So please take that, what you've learned today, those 3 C's of advocacy, and go out there and do the good work that needs to get done. And also, I would like to encourage all of you who are still here, please answer the survey questions that will pop up right after you get off this call. And it'll also be sent out in the email afterwards, along with certificates of attendance and the recording. So thank you all again, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.